Forget about the One Piece hype because there's a TCG that's reaching new levels with huge buyouts currently happening across the board. Dragon Ball Fusion World cards are rising at the moment and prices are soaring, and this is actually super interesting. So firstly, for a little bit of fun history and a little bit of lore about my channel, one of my earliest videos I made was called the video, The 7 Reasons Why Dragon Ball Fusion World Was a Genius Investment. And dude, this video has been shredded and thrashed with comments. Phil, this age like milk. Phil, oh man, look, this video it's aging horribly. Man, you were so wrong about Fusion World. You must regret making this video. The list goes on and on. But 2 years later, and it seems that my original idea about this TCG took just a slightly bit longer than expected, and now the market is moving, and honestly, it's on a bit of a quick rise at the moment. Now, Dragon Ball is in a good position, and not to just sound like some raging Dragon Ball fan or nerd, which I am, but you know, there is a truth that needs to be said right now. There is a lot of reasons why I'm confident in Dragon Ball TCG and more widespread success for this TCG. And eventually I do think it's going to overtake One Piece, and there is a rationale behind this. Dragon Ball has been treated like an afterthought for years. The fact that the cards even still have a strong audience is genuinely impressive. It's literally been completely neglected. Hardly any media for Dragon Ball has come out, and it is literally hanging on a thread. And just a few days ago, Dragon Ball just announced that the Super anime will be continuing after a huge 8-year hiatus. This means the Moro arc will be animated, along with early Dragon Ball Super episodes being completely reanimated. Now this is so big because the anime is what gives Dragon Ball life, and it's had no lifeline since 2018. Since Dragon Ball Super went on this indefinite hiatus, Dragon Ball has literally lived off like side quests and scraps. The anime is what pulls fans in, and it keeps everyone engaged. Now, to be fair, it has had a little bit of movement. So we have had 2 new movies, there's been a few games, and Dragon Ball Daima, all which were great, but it wasn't the main source of energy to keep the franchise growing. Dragon Ball has literally had no engine for over 8 years. When we look at One Piece, of course the TCG would be in such a successful position. If we look at 2018 when Dragon Ball Super went on this indefinite hiatus, One Piece has dropped hundreds of episodes. That's constant momentum, constant hype. There's just this constant level of engagement with the franchise. Or don't even start with Pokemon. They've literally mastered growing their audience and just keeping us all engaged. Since 2018, Pokemon's had Sword and Shield release. It's had Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and it's even had Scarlet and Violet release a whole new generation. So when we all clown at Dragon Ball and laugh and look at it, well, guess what? Since 2018, when Dragon Ball Super went on that hiatus, look how much Pokemon has built. That's a long amount of time. So I mean, people can keep laughing at Dragon Ball and looking at the TCG and, you know, making their jokes, but it's been a skeleton for 8 years. But now with this new announcement that Dragon Ball Super anime will be returning, I do think the market will grow with that as well. And honestly, already early signs that the market is moving. All right, let's talk about the market that's currently happening with Dragon Ball across the board, particularly Fusion World. Now, Dragon Ball TCG, it's a bit convoluted because they have Dragon Ball Masters, right? And that was like their dominant kind of space. And then they kind of thought that the game got too complex and too convoluted. So then they made Dragon Ball Fusion World, which came out in 2024, which is kind of like a simplified Dragon Ball Masters, but the awkwardness that happened, and this is what I mean, Dragon Ball hasn't just been like neglected in the anime, there's also been a bit of weird decisions that happened, this being one of them. Though they kind of split the TCG, they kept Masters running, and they've also now introduced Fusion World, and they're running like parallel to each other. It was just, so there's a bit of confusion on the TCG because there's 2 different sets. We are talking currently for the Dragon Ball Fusion World, and this is the Manga booster box. If you haven't seen this set, it's absolutely incredible. A lot of illustrations from Akira Toriyama himself. A big throwback to Dragon Ball, the OG Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z, not Dragon Ball Super. This set is a real classic. Amazing artworks throughout the board. It is such an incredible set, really good artworks. And I bought a few booster boxes because I was such a big fan. Great thing about Dragon Ball is you can buy it at retail price, unlike Pokemon and One Piece. So when we're looking in the last 3 months, just check out how the Manga booster box has been traveling, selling for $187 in November. But with this new like One Piece hype that happened, slowly was trickling to Dragon Ball, and you can see now it's had a bit of growth right here, selling for $300 a booster box. In the last month, that's where most of that growth happened, as you can see right there, especially right here around January 24th. Now, just around that point was when the whole new Super anime was told that it was going to return. So you can see the market literally just went up. Oh, there you go, 328 US, sorry. The market has just gone up in such a short amount of time because there's been a lot of life brought into Dragon Ball, and you really cannot ignore that. When we look at the godfather of animes, it's Dragon Ball. Whether or not you watched it growing up, whether or not you're a fan, I think everyone that watches my channel would have watched Dragon Ball, but you know, if you're a younger person and you love Pokemon and you love One Piece, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you're not really into Dragon Ball because there's been no life, as I mentioned earlier in the video, and this is a big deal, and this is the reason why if the Super anime returns properly and we see proper engagement and proper like fan community service, and we see the fan engagement increase, man, I'm telling you, like it's no joke on how powerful Dragon Ball is when it's actually running properly. Problem is, we haven't really seen that, so people have just tend to forget. And the Manga booster box 02, as you can see, it went up all the way here, was selling for 175, then it dropped down to 85, and you can see right there, right now selling for $162. If we pull that into the month graph, right there, you can see January 22nd, with that new news, that's really where it spiked. It was selling for 122 US. With that new news in the last 7 days, already now selling for 175 US, and I imagine we're just early days now. Like when I'm making this video, what I'm talking about Dragon Ball Fusion World, when I'm talking about Dragon Ball just in general, even Dragon Ball Masters, we're early days. The franchise has been brought back to life. There is a lot to like look at this TCG, and I wouldn't write it off. I'm not just saying this because I'm a Dragon Ball fan. I just understand the impact of this. And when something has been like not seen, when you haven't had any life or just such like small like little crumble, like crumbs, it's literally just been sprinkled crumbs for such a long time. Well, guess what? When the momentum hits, it's big. I mean, look at me, dude. I'm excited. You think it's laundry day for me. Look what I'm wearing, and I'm telling you this. I didn't even have time to get proper clothes on to tell you this news because I was so excited. But it's singlet fill, you know what I'm saying? Singlet fill energy. Now, moving on to FB01 Awakened Pulse. Man, was I clowned for this set. But there you go, with that news right there. Check that out. Just in the last few days, man. Selling for $107. That was before the news that we found out that Dragon Ball Super was returning and the Mora arc is going to be animated and it's going to continue. And look at that already, straight up. Few days selling 125 US just in a short amount of time. Mind you, look at that. Mind you, if you see on that month graph, it had no movement. It was literally always selling for 106, 105, $106 all that month. That news caused that spike. That news really brought it into like the limelight, right? The thing is, and I have a feeling with this news, a lot of energy has just been brought back into Dragon Ball. It's a big deal. People clowned on it for so long. And when you really compare to how much love and energy One Piece and Pokemon have had in the last few years, how is Dragon Ball TCG or any Dragon Ball trading cards or any collectibles ever really going to compete? Same thing with Blazing Aura. This is FB02 from Fusion World. Right there, selling for 48 US. You can see these booster boxes are dirt cheap. Right now selling for $76. So there is a bit of growth happening. Pokemon, on one hand, is in a lull. Your One Piece is growing, but Dragon Ball, a TCG I'm very familiar with, is now growing. And where will the brake pedal be? Because you got to remember, if the TCG does grow, if the Super anime brings in so many fans and this life, like I'm kind of predicting, is going to come back in, what will that mean for this lull period? Will it be like the Pokemon TCG when no one really cared about Rebel Clash because or even all the Sun and Moon sets when people weren't that engaged? Will these sets start appreciating like crazy if huge fan adoption happens, if people start wanting to collect Dragon Ball stuff again? Will this era be a bit of a forgotten era when Dragon Ball was like a skeleton? I just think like that, you know, because it's interesting that if Dragon Ball did grow, which it will, I mean, it's just undeniable right now. There's so much momentum and hype about Dragon Ball. If it starts growing, what are these? Are these going to be like those skeleton era sets? Are these going to be like the ghost sets that no one really thought of at the time and they become very highly sought after? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's how I think about my collectibles. If you look at collectibles in general, it's usually the thing when people write them off, that's when they become like crazy unique collectibles. Like even for video games, if we look at Zelda Twilight Princess, this is super interesting. Zelda Twilight Princess came out at the end of the GameCube's life cycle. It came out like literally when the GameCube completely like dusted its hands off. It was meant to go on the Wii. Twilight Princess released for both GameCube and Wii. If you look at the prices of the Nintendo Wii version, They're really cheap. Anyone can pick it up. But if you look at the prices of the GameCube version, it's insanely expensive because no one really bought it at the time. And that's how collectibles can work. Sometimes that real rare stuff happens when something unique happens or there was an era that people writ it off. So, that's why I'm looking at this era right now, and it was in such a low momentum point for Dragon Ball. It would be interesting if a lot of hype keeps growing, what these sets that were just like no one cared about, what could happen in a few years. Another one is FBO4 Ultra Limit, and you can see on that graph just that big spike, and that coincides with the new news. As you can see, it was selling for $43. Right here, January 21st, $54. Right now selling for $65. So this massive spike out of nowhere. And is it a coincidence that they said the Dragon Ball Super's returning and these big spikes all happening around that time period? I don't know. Personally, I don't think it is. I personally think that people are just like, nah, I'm back. I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. And me as a Dragon Ball fan, that's exactly how I feel. So I can imagine on a world scale, a lot of people would be feeling the same way. Now, interestingly, Dragon Ball Masters. So that is, in terms of Fusion World and Masters, Masters does have some absolutely incredible artworks. I'm talking about the history of Z. This one's been growing crazy, man. And I'm going to just pull this in the last 6 months, though. This one has been growing quite steadily, but it has had, as you can see right there on that graph, a big spike. Was selling around for $265 a booster box in September. Right here around January, selling for $296 US. Check that out, man. Selling for $366 US. So there is pockets of these Dragon Ball booster boxes. I'm kind of shattered. I was going to buy this booster box. It was already overpriced when I wanted to buy it. I was going to buy it and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to bother. And there you go. Like right there, selling for $366 US. A lot of hype, amazing cards in this. If we go on the month graph, you can also see in that last month, it has been growing, probably a little bit trickling down from what's happening with One Piece. And the fact that there is so much new news coming for Dragon Ball. And some really cool cards. One of the most iconic cards from 2018, especially, this card was big at the time. And don't forget, this card was so big and so iconic, released in 2018, Son Goku, the Awakened Power. But guess what? The anime was still around, or at least it just ended at that point. It was a big deal, this card back then, right? Right now, it's selling for $369 in October. Currently selling for $441. That is nowhere near a high point for this card. This card has crashed so bad, man. Like when it released in 2018, when Dragon Ball had so much life in it, it was a crazy hyped card. And of course now, just people are just like, oh, Dragon Ball cards, they're pretty much junk. Though, again, some of these may start climbing again, especially if there's more hype and momentum that builds. And one of my favorite secret rares from Ultimate Advent, the Gogeta artwork, really cool. Selling for $249 in January, right now selling for $354. If we pull that in the last 6 months, you can again see that hype swing with the sales has all happened just recently as well. It was pretty much selling consistently for $200 US. Pretty much in the last 6 months, and there you go, now selling for $354. Early days, there might be a lot of hype now with Dragon Ball, but I'm very, very interested to see what's going to happen now, especially with this new life that's been brought in. I don't want to sound like I'm just hyping it for the sake of it, but this is pretty much what a lot of fans have been waiting for. It's been people have been waiting for this for years, and I do have a good feeling, like especially when we look at One Piece and Pokemon, it's funny to just we can easily just say, hey, Dragon Ball, what a joke. But again, it's had no energy in it. It's had no life. It's had no engine. Nothing's been moving it forward. So we'll see in the next 2 years, and I'd love to revisit this video in 2 years, how much of a difference can happen when there's actual life and momentum being built in. Because I do think, like, as funny as it is to clown on Dragon Ball and laugh it off, it's very easy for people that are investing in One Piece to say, no, it's never going to touch it. Of course it's never going to touch it, because One Piece has been absolutely smashing it in terms of how much media presence they've had in the last few years. Pokemon's absolutely gone ballooning out of control with how much popularity it's had. They've been, all things considered, some people can critique Pokemon. The franchise is treated with a lot of care, a lot of respect with Pokemon. There is so much continuous media coming out, games, they're always feeding the fans. They're never letting the fans go dry, and that is a big reason why the TCG is growing like it is. Of course, something like Dragon Ball, where the fans have always felt like, hey, what's going to happen? Hey, we're waiting for it. Of course, there wasn't going to be any movement, but now things may change and it will be very interesting. And like I said, in 2 years from now, I can't wait to revisit a video like this because I've got a good feeling that a lot of things will change. Though with all that said, there is a lot of reasons. And like I said, there was that video that I made a long time ago called the 7 Reasons Why Dragon Ball is a Genius Investment. And it's an old video, but if you do want to watch that, feel free to watch it on this video on screen appearing right now. In this video on screen, you can see why I believe that Dragon Ball Fusion World was a genius investment through my eyes and what I thought at the time. If you like this video, click the video that's appearing on screen. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next video.